It's happening. Stellantis, the fourth largest automaker in the world, is unraveling, and no one is talking about it loud enough. We're watching the collapse of a global giant in real time. Dealers are slashing prices. Massive discounts are spreading like wildfire. Vehicles once selling for over $50,000 are now being offered at nearly half the price. And behind this sudden generosity is a storm of financial chaos that could drag Stellantis to the edge of bankruptcy. Let's be clear, this isn't just about one company struggling with a few bad quarters. Stellantis, which owns massive brands like Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler, and Fiat, is facing a perfect storm. Crashing EV sales, skyrocketing inventory, factory shutdowns, consumer demand falling off a cliff, and brutal competition from China and Tesla. It's the kind of disaster that forces companies to either reinvent themselves or collapse. And right now, Stellantis is teetering. Look at Jeep, once one of America's most iconic brands. Just a few years ago, Wranglers were flying off the lot. Now, dealers can't move them. Sales are down double digits. Incentives are up to $15,000 on some models. Leasing deals so cheap, it's almost like they're paying you to drive the car off the lot. Why? Because Stellantis is trying to dump inventory fast. Their lots are overflowing. Hundreds of thousands of unsold vehicles are piling up. Interest rates are high, buyers are disappearing, and the pressure to move metal is turning into panic. Ram is in even worse shape. Their 1,500 pickups, once considered direct competitors to the Ford F-150, are now sitting untouched. In June alone, dealers were offering up to $20,000 off sticker prices in some regions. And yet, sales still aren't rebounding. It's not just the economy. It's a trust issue. Consumers see the writing on the wall, and they're staying away. Even loyalists are worried that parts, service, and resale value could plummet if Stellantis spirals further. Internally, things look even more unstable. Stellantis just announced multiple rounds of layoffs, closing plants in Illinois, shifting production out of the U.S., and consolidating operations in Europe. These are not small moves. These are survival tactics. The company is bleeding money trying to transition to electric vehicles, but their EV rollout has been sluggish, underwhelming, and largely ignored by the market. The Jeep Avenger? Barely making a dent. Fiat's EVs? Virtually invisible in the U.S. And their long-promised Ram REV electric truck? Delayed again. Meanwhile, Tesla continues to dominate the EV space. Chinese automakers like BYD and NIO are pushing aggressively into Europe and Latin America. Stellantis, stuck in between outdated gas-powered models and half-baked EVs, is falling behind fast. They're not innovating, they're reacting. And Wall Street sees it too. Stock analysts have started downgrading Stellantis. Investors are pulling out. Warnings are flying that the company's long-term growth is in jeopardy. And here's the kicker. This entire meltdown is becoming a golden opportunity for buyers. If you've been waiting to buy a car, this could be the moment. The company is unloading vehicles with aggressive rebates, zero-interest financing, loyalty cash, conquest bonuses, everything short of putting a bow on it and dropping it off at your house. In fact, some customers are walking into showrooms and negotiating prices down $15,000 to $25,000 off MSRP. It's unreal. And yet, it's happening. Because Stellantis is desperate. They need cash flow. They need to clear inventory. They need anything that can keep the lights on a little longer. But make no mistake, these discounts are not a sign of health. They're a warning signal. A company doesn't just give away cars unless it's facing serious trouble. Think about what this means for warranties, long-term support, and resale value. Think about what happens if dealerships start closing. This isn't a fire sale, it's a five-alarm blaze. And behind the scenes, there are signs that the company's leadership is scrambling. CEO Carlos Tavares has been pushing for extreme, cost-cutting measures. Entire product lines are on the chopping block. Factories in the U.S. and Italy have been targeted for closure. Union battles are heating up. Tensions between Stellantis and American workers are boiling over, with accusations that the company is abandoning its promises. The UAW has already warned that Stellantis is not fulfilling its commitments under recent labor agreements. At the same time, Stellantis is quietly moving production to cheaper labor markets in Mexico and Eastern Europe. It's a classic strategy. Cut costs, offshore jobs, and hope shareholders don't panic. But this time, it's not working. The pressure is mounting from all sides. Customers are fleeing. Investors are nervous. Workers are furious. And competitors are circling like sharks in the water. Stellantis is trying to juggle too much: legacy brands, failing EV launches, labor disputes, and a global economic slowdown. It's unsustainable. And here's where it gets even darker. Because what Stellantis isn't saying publicly, but what's becoming painfully clear, is that their entire global strategy is fracturing. They were betting big on consolidation. The merger between Fiat Chrysler and PSA Group was supposed to create a superpower. Instead, it created confusion, culture clashes, and a bloated company that can't steer its own future. Decisions made in Europe are clashing with market realities in America. Jeep and Ram are suffering because the priorities at headquarters don't match what U.S. consumers want. And now we're seeing the consequences. Stellantis is quietly scaling back development budgets. Rumored models like the next-gen Dodge Durango or a proper Hellcat successor slashed or indefinitely postponed. Investment in U.S. facilities is drying up, while more funds are being funneled into projects overseas. Even their EV development, which was supposed to be the company's future, has become a logistical mess. The SDLA platform delays are rippling through the entire lineup, throwing production timelines into chaos. This disorganization is now costing them dearly in the showroom. Walk into a Stellantis dealership and you'll notice something strange. Models that should have been updated years ago are still being sold as new. The Dodge Challenger and Charger, once muscle car royalty, haven't had a real update in over a decade. Chrysler only has one vehicle left, the aging Pacifica minivan. Fiat is practically non-existent in North America. And Alfa Romeo and Maserati? Still niche, still struggling, still bleeding money. Meanwhile, Stellantis dealers are growing increasingly frustrated. They're being forced to sell outdated inventory, while watching customers flood into Ford, Toyota, Hyundai, even Honda, for more modern, better-equipped alternatives. Many dealers are privately saying they've never seen discounting like this in their careers. Floor plan costs, what dealers pay to keep inventory on the lot, are skyrocketing due to high interest rates, and Stellantis isn't offering enough support to ease that burden. The result? Dealerships are starting to cut ties, looking for ways to abandon the brand before it's too late. And here's the bigger concern. What happens to the used car market if Stellantis goes under or is forced into restructuring? Thousands of vehicles with questionable long-term support will flood the secondary market. Resale values could crater. Warranties might not be honored. Parts shortages would skyrocket. It's not just about new car buyers. This would ripple through the entire auto ecosystem. Behind all of this is a deepening fear among employees. Stellantis has already laid off thousands across the U.S. and Europe, and insiders say more cuts are coming. Morale is collapsing. Talent is leaving for more stable companies like GM, Ford, or even EV startups that at least have a direction. People inside the company are bracing for a major shakeup, possibly a sale of one or more brands, or worse, a full corporate breakup. And here's where the story takes a sharp turn into uncharted territory. Because rumors are swirling that Stellantis may be exploring a radical option, pulling certain brands out of the U.S. market altogether. Think about that. Imagine a future where Dodge disappears from America, where Chrysler is just a memory, where Ram becomes a badge for export only. It sounds extreme, but given the financial strain, the operational chaos, and the lack of a coherent plan for the future, it's starting to sound plausible. The company has already begun shifting its focus to European EV models, betting heavily on stricter EU emissions mandates and fleet sales abroad. That means less focus on the American market and less patience for slow-selling models. And if the U.S. consumer keeps rejecting Stellantis vehicles, the company might make a hard pivot and abandon the very market that made Jeep, Dodge, and Ram household names. Let that sink in. We're not just talking about discount deals or a rough quarter. We're talking about a legacy, an empire built over decades, now in danger of being dismantled piece by piece in front of our eyes. And the scariest part? Stellantis isn't denying any of this. They're just staying quiet, hoping the discounts will be enough to keep buyers interested. But we've seen this movie before. When the fire sales start, the bankruptcy usually isn't far behind. And just like that, we're watching history repeat itself. Remember 2008? Chrysler, GM, on the edge of collapse. Dealerships boarded up overnight. Massive government bailouts. Tens of thousands of jobs lost. The ripple effects touched everything: finance, supply chains, local economies. Now, flash forward to today, and Stellantis is walking the same tightrope. But this time, there's no clear rescue plan. No safety net. No guarantees. And the clock is ticking. Stellantis isn't a household name like Ford or GM, and that's part of the problem. Most Americans still refer to the company by its old parts: Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Chrysler. But that confusion has worked against them. There's no clear identity, no unifying vision. Each brand is drifting in a different direction. Dodge leans into performance nostalgia. Jeep chases luxury and off-road. Ram plays catch-up in the truck war. Chrysler? Just trying to stay alive. Fiat and Alfa Romeo? Hanging by a thread. This brand schizophrenia is killing consumer trust. People don't know what Stellantis stands for. Are they about EV innovation? Affordable performance? European efficiency? American muscle? The lack of a unified brand voice has made Stellantis look outdated and out of touch, while competitors double down on clarity and purpose. Meanwhile, consumers are getting smarter. They're watching these moves closely. They're reading the headlines about layoffs, production cuts, and financial warnings. And when it's time to buy a car, they're asking the hard questions. Will this brand still be around in 5 years? Will I be able to get parts? Is this vehicle a smart investment or a gamble? And here's where Stellantis faces a brutal reality. Their pricing strategy is working too well. Yes, the deep discounts are moving some metal, but it's also destroying brand equity. Buyers are being trained to wait for massive markdowns. Why pay full price today when you know next month it'll be $10,000 cheaper? It's the same trap that killed Oldsmobile, Saturn, and Pontiac. Once the discount culture sets in, it's nearly impossible to recover. You can't rebuild value when your customers are conditioned to expect fire sale prices. And things aren't any better in the corporate offices. Sources say Stellantis executives are split. Some want to double down on EVs, pushing forward no matter the cost. Others want to retreat, refocus on profitable gas-powered models, and stall the EV transition. That internal tug-of-war has created paralysis. Projects are delayed, decisions are reversed, and the company's public messaging is growing more chaotic by the day. Just look at the Ram 1500 REV. Touted as the company's answer to the Ford Lightning and Tesla Cybertruck, it's now tangled in delays, redesigns, and vague promises. There's still no clear delivery timeline, no final pricing, no compelling edge that makes it stand out. And while Stellantis stalls, Ford and Tesla are racing ahead. Scooping up market share Stellantis may never get back. Even worse, many of Stellantis EVs are being engineered primarily for the European market, not the US. A massive gamble considering how EV adoption in America is already showing signs of plateauing. Consumers want hybrids. They want practical, affordable vehicles. But Stellantis is still trying to sell compact Euro hatchbacks to pickup truck country. It's a disconnect that borders on corporate blindness. And speaking of blind spots, what's the plan for dealerships? Because right now, many are hanging by a thread. Service departments are overwhelmed with recall work. Sales teams are burning out under pressure to meet unrealistic quotas. And the incentives, though generous, are killing margins. Dealerships that once relied on consistent volume are now surviving week to week, watching floor plan interest build while foot traffic drops. They know something big is coming. They just don't know when or how bad it'll be. And in the middle of all this chaos, the competition is licking its chops. Toyota is dominating hybrid sales. Ford is finding footing again with its Maverick, Lightning, and refreshed lineup. GM is pushing hard with Ultium Tech. And Tesla? Still printing money. Stellantis, by comparison, looks like a company playing defense in an industry that only rewards offense. Every warning sign is flashing red. Credit downgrades, investor skepticism, employee unrest, product delays, market share erosion, and worst of all, consumer indifference. Because when buyers stop caring, when they stop believing in your brand, it's over. And if Stellantis doesn't act now, if it doesn't stabilize, reorganize, and find a clear direction, then what we're witnessing isn't just a rough patch. It's the beginning of the end. Because the signs aren't just visible, they're deafening. When a company this large, with brands this iconic, starts cutting investments, laying off workers, and slashing prices all at once, it doesn't signal strategy. It signals survival mode. Stellantis is bleeding from every direction, and even their most loyal dealers are bracing for impact. Let's talk numbers, because numbers don't lie. Stellantis U.S. sales have declined year over year, even in a market that's slowly recovering post-COVID. While rivals are gaining momentum, Stellantis is stalling. In Q2 of this year, Jeep sales dropped another 7%, Ram slid by nearly 19%, and Dodge, aside from its cult muscle car following, is barely clinging on. These are not isolated blips. This is sustained erosion across every major brand. And the discounts? They're reaching levels the market hasn't seen since the 2009 recession. We're talking up to $20,000 off on select Ram trucks. Jeep Grand Cherokees with $12,000 price cuts. 0% APR for 72 months on vehicles that once had waiting lists. In the short term, it sounds like a dream for consumers. But in the long term, it's a symptom of a company hemorrhaging confidence. Confidence from customers. Confidence from Wall Street. Confidence from its own partners. And perhaps most dangerously, confidence from within. Inside Stellantis, employee leaks are painting a dire picture. Some departments have reportedly frozen all non-essential spending. Development teams are being restructured or reassigned mid-project. Plan launches are being delayed into oblivion or outright scrapped. And top-tier talent? They're leaving quietly and quickly. Engineers, marketers, and managers are jumping ship to rivals with better direction, more resources, and less uncertainty. And what's Stellantis doing to stop the bleeding? Throwing darts at a wall. They're betting on a multi-brand strategy that's bloated and outdated. Alfa Romeo, for instance, is still being marketed as a luxury alternative to BMW and Audi, but with inferior dealer support and limited brand loyalty in the US Maserati, still operating in a vacuum. Fiat is all but dead here. Chrysler is one model away from extinction. And now even Jeep, once the crown jewel, is losing ground fast. How did it all go so wrong, so fast? It goes back to the root of the Stellantis merger. When PSA and FCA joined forces, the plan was synergy. Cut costs, share platforms, scale production. On paper, it made sense. But in practice, it created a Frankenstein company. Cultures didn't mesh. Strategies clashed. What was supposed to be a unified global powerhouse turned into a fragmented patchwork of legacy brands, each pulling in a different direction. And now, that lack of vision is coming home to roost. Because while Stellantis is trying to be everything to everyone, off-roader, luxury, muscle car, budget commuter, it's slowly becoming nothing to anyone. The market doesn't reward confusion. It rewards clarity. It rewards leadership. And Stellantis, right now, is offering neither. The company keeps pointing to future models and EV platforms like SDLA Medium and SDLA Large as proof they're moving forward. But investors and analysts are losing patience. Consumers aren't waiting around, and competitors are seizing every inch of ground Stellantis leaves behind. But here's what's most chilling. This collapse isn't happening in silence. It's happening loudly. The discounts, the layoffs, the plant closures, it's all public. It's all unfolding in real time. And yet, most people still don't realize how close to the edge Stellantis really is. Because what happens if the next quarter is even worse? What happens if another EV rollout fails? If another wave of layoffs hits? If more dealers jump ship? What happens if the company files? That's the question no one wants to answer out loud. But more people inside the auto industry are starting to whisper it. If Stellantis files for bankruptcy, the consequences won't just impact their employees or shareholders. This isn't just a company. It's an entire ecosystem. Thousands of dealerships. Tens of thousands of supplier contracts. Entire communities built around their factories and parts plants. We're talking ripple effects that will slam into everything from part suppliers in Ohio to transport carriers in Texas to tech firms in Italy. And if Stellantis were to go down hard, it wouldn't just be the company on life support. It could trigger a domino effect throughout the auto supply chain. Smaller suppliers who rely on Stellantis volume would be crushed. Parts availability for current owners would vanish overnight. Local economies that depend on manufacturing jobs could collapse. And for the average buyer, the fallout could be even more personal. If you just bought a brand new Ram or Jeep, what happens to your resale value? What happens to your 5-year powertrain warranty if the company is in bankruptcy court slashing liabilities? Look at what happened with Saab. Look at what happened with Saturn. There are people who are still struggling to get replacement parts for cars they bought a decade ago from brands that disappeared overnight. This is why so many analysts are warning consumers to be cautious. Yes, the deals look incredible right now. And if you're leasing for a couple of years, it might make sense. But if you're planning to own that vehicle long-term, the risks are growing. You could be holding a product with no support, no parts pipeline, and no resale demand. And the warning signs are getting clearer by the week. Just recently, Bank of America downgraded Stellantis stock, slashing its price target and shifting its outlook from buy to neutral. Their reason? Structural weakness, declining U.S. momentum, and uncertain EV strategy. That's financial speak for this ship is drifting without a rudder. Other analysts are echoing the same sentiment. Concerns over how long Stellantis can sustain its current burn rate, especially with North American margins shrinking quarter after quarter.